All right, welcome everyone to this Friday afternoon, getting ready for Shabbos, getting ready for Shavuos. Once again, we dedicate our words of Torah today to all those in Israel for their safety and security, and especially to all those soldiers, including members of our own shul who are standing guard for the Jewish people and for the state of Israel. Very moving to see their dedication and to see, their enthusiasm about being able to protect us. And there's something very special and very holy about that. We wish them only well and only good health. We are going to learn a couple of short Rashis, actually from the seventh Aliyah today in Parshas Bamidbar. Towards the end of this Parsha, we learn not just in general, we talked a lot about the census of the Jewish people as a whole, but towards the end of the Parsha, we also get to the census of the tribe of Levi in specific, and then to the roles that each of the families of the Levium were to play in the Mishkan. And sorry, here we go. We count the Levium here in this seventh Aliyah, and the Torah introduces it by telling us Naso is Rosh B'nai Kahas. The first family to be counted is B'nai Kahas, and then Gershon Umerari. Those come in Parshas Naso. As they're counted, we also learn about their role. So the way the count is described here is Mi ben shloshim shana v'mala vad ben chamishim shana kol ba latzava la'asos malacha be'ol moed. The men that were supposed to be counted from the family of Kahas were from 30 years old to 50 years old. Anyone coming latzava, and here latzava doesn't mean the army, but it means service. What service? Lasos malacha ba'ol moed, to do the various tasks in the Ohel Moed. From there, the Torah goes on to describe what their task was. Zos avodas b'nei Kahas ba'ol moed, kodesh HaKodashim. We'll get to that in a second. Before we get to that, Rashi already notices over here that the count of the Levium from age 30 to 50 is different than the count of the rest of the Jewish people. If you go to the beginning of Bamidbar, when the census of the rest of the Jewish people is introduced, it says, Mi ben esrim shana v'mala kol yotzei tzava b'Yisrael. Only from year 20 and on do you count them. When it comes to the Levium, it's year 30 until 50. So why is that the case? Rashi explains over here, Mana mehen es harayon la'avodas masa. The whole purpose of the count over here of the Levium was not to go into the army, but for a different task, which is avodas masa, to carry the pieces of the Mishkan throughout the desert. Those were going to be the jobs of each of the families of the Levium, as we're about to discover in a second. The Hain, and therefore they were counted mi ben shloshim v'ad ben chamishim, from 30 to 50. Why? Hapachos mishloshim lo nisma lekochan, because below 20 years old, below 30 years old, meaning from 20 to 30, their strength is not fully developed. Their strength to be able to carry these heavy things of the Mishkan was not fully developed. And therefore, for the purpose of the Levium, as opposed to the army purpose, they were counted from age 30 and up. Rashi also notes, Mikan Amru ben Shloshim lakoach v'hayesar chamishim kocho makchish me'ata. It also tells us that this is from this pasuk that Chazal learned the notion of ben shloshim lakoach, 30 to strength, and also tells us that from age 50, a person's strength starts to deteriorate. It's a fascinating insight. I'm not sure it would be exactly true today. People's bodies develop in different ways. We know maturity happens at different levels today than it did once upon a time. We know aging happens in a different way than it did once upon a time. People live longer, people live stronger. We have medicine, we have exercise, we have science, we know so much more. So the bracket might be different today than it was at one time, but I think even today we have a sense that at a certain age your strength comes into full flux, full fruition, and then at a certain age your strength starts to deteriorate. That's kind of the bell curve of the way our strength works in life. And so it's interesting to see Rashi note that over here. And I never fully realized that when I learned the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which Rashi is referring to. We have the famous Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which says, Huaya Omer, Ben Chamesh Shanim Lemikra, at 5 you start learning Torah, Ben Eser Lemishnah, at 10 Torah Shabbat Peh, Ben Shloshesrei Lemitzos, 13 you start to become obligated in mitzvos, Ben Chameshrei Talmud, 15 you learn Gemara, Ben Shmonasrei Lechopa, 18 you get married, Ben Esrim Lirdof, at 20 you start to chase a livelihood, you start to chase things in the world, ambition. Ben shloshim lakoach. At 30, you become full in your strength. Ben arba'im labina. At 40, you become wise. Ben chamishim la'etza. At 50, you become even wiser, etc., etc. So the bracket here of 30 to 50 is really noted in the Mishnah. I always knew ben shloshim lakoach, but I never fully kind of developed or appreciated what that meant, the 30 or the 50. If you look at the Bar Tanura on this Mishnah, he directs us right back to our pasuk. Ben shloshim lakoach. How did Yehuda ben Tema here in the Mishnah know? Sorry. How did Yehuda ben Tema here in our Mishnah know that ben shloshim lakoach? How did he know that at 30 you reach the fullness of your strength? Because of our pasuk, because they counted Levim who had to carry from 30 as opposed to 20, we realize that only at 30 does a person's strength become fully developed. So too here, ben chamishim la'etza, shenemar ba'levim, again having to do with Levim of our parsha. Ben chamishim shana yashuv mitzvah havoda v'lo yavod od. At 50 you go back from your work. V'shreis zechav. And he should, instead of carrying, once he's reached the maximum of the strength and he starts to become on the decline at 50, what should he go back to do? He should serve his brethren. What does that mean? To give them wisdom. So the 30 lakoach and chamishim la'etza here of our Mishnah, Yehuda ben Tema, really fits exactly with the psukim of our parsha. I never realized the connection between them. I thought that was interesting. Okay, one more note here before we end. So, of course, they're counted from 30 to 50 because that's the bell curve of strength, at least in the time of the Torah. And then the strength factor is important because the reason they're being counted is to do their service. And their service was to carry things. And then the Torah delineates that. The service of Bnei Kahas in specific has to do with Kodesh HaKodashim. As I mentioned this morning in Shul, in our Rashi this morning, Kodesh HaKodashim doesn't mean that they have to go into the Kodesh HaKodashim, the Holy of Holies. That's only a place the Kohen Gadol can go. Levim are not allowed there. It just means they're supposed to carry the holiest of objects, the Aron, the Shulchan, the Menorah, the Mizbachos, etc., etc. And then that's their job. Now, the Torah also says, after delineating their job, all of a sudden it mixes in Aaron and his children, the Kohanim, into this service of the Levim. It's very strange. This Levim's job is to dismantle, it's to take, it's to carry these implements of the Mishkan, to carry the Mishkan itself over the course of all their travels. That's what's being spelled out here in our Aliyah. Why does it go back to the service of Aaron Ubanav, of the Kohanim? Rashi explains over here, Yachnisu kol kli lanartika mufurash lo parshazo v'lo yitztarchu halavim b'nei kahas ela laseis. It actually is mentioned here because it's meant to tell us that the job of Levim only happens once everything is dismantled and packaged and ready to go. They don't actually go in and take the pieces of the Mishkan apart and cover them and put them in their rightful place. That's the job of the Kohanim. Of course, they couldn't enter a lot of the places where they would have to go in order to dismantle. So the pasuk is clarifying for us that part of the job of carrying the Mishkan really starts with the Kohanim b'nei Aaron, who took each piece, covered it over with the proper covers, and then handed it over to the Levim, who would carry the various pieces they were designated to carry. Bnei Kahas would carry the Aron, the Menorah, the Mizbeach, all the things from the Kodesh area of the Mishkan. And as we'll see in next week's Parsha, Gershon Merari got to carry other pieces of the Mishkan itself. Thank you all so much. I hope you have a wonderful Shabbos, a safe Shabbos, and we should only hear Besorah Tovot, good news in the days to come. Take care, everybody.
Have a good Shabbos,
Thank you,
everyone.
Rabbi. Shalom.
Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
And have a Chag Sameach. Be well, everyone.
Chag Sameach.
Take care.